Afternoon, guys. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School, and I came out here to the edge of a wildlife area today, way out on some back roads, just to kind of get some quiet and get out of the wind because it's a really windy day here in Southeast Ohio. And I wanted to kind of do an intro to a series that I'm going to start on, for lack of a better term, vehicle camping. And I hate to use the word overland because I think that word is kind of overused nowadays. But camping from a vehicle can be a very fun way to get in the outdoors and be able to travel over longer distances and possibly get to locations that you might want to go to and camp either primitively or out of your vehicle, and do that much easier than trying to walk to somewhere. And if you can get your vehicle into those locations and get you closer to where you want to be, whether that is on the side of a mountain somewhere, out in the middle of nowhere, next to a stream or a lake to fish, whatever the case may be, if you can do that from your vehicle, then that's all the better. And I recently bought a 2021 Jeep Gladiator, and I'm going to set this thing up to be able to be off-road capable, but also to be self-sufficient in that I can camp or base camp from this vehicle for several days if I choose to do so. So I thought I would kind of walk around that a little bit with you guys today and talk about some of the things that maybe I think are important, some of the things that I've already started to work on to build this vehicle, some of the things that I have ordered that I haven't got yet, and then we'll talk about some of the things that we're going to review along the way. And I just kind of thought this would be a good intro in a 5 to 7 minute to maybe 10-minute video talking about this Jeep Gladiator. Stay with me, guys. Okay, so this is my 2021 Gladiator Sport. It is not a Rubicon. I do not plan to go rock crawling with this thing in Moab or someplace. So I'm not sure that locking differentials and things like that are necessary for what I plan to do and for the extra money that that would have cost. So I went with a sport model Gladiator. Now I do have aftermarket shocks, aftermarket wheels, aftermarket tires on this thing. I'm running 35s on this truck. It has had the undercarriage completely Duracoated and the bed rhino lined. It also has a SmartTop on it from Africa, which we'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. But I wanted you to kind of get to look at this, and then it's got rocker bars on the bottom and steps that are also aftermarket that we put on, and I've changed the grill. Other than that, right now it's stock, but I do have lots of things on order and things that are being done progressively to this vehicle, and we'll talk about the importance of that in a few minutes because I'm prioritizing what I'm doing with this vehicle for the way I want to use it. So we'll talk about that too. Okay, so in the back of this vehicle, you already saw videos that we put a decked system in the back of this, which is basically 2 drawers that live permanently in the vehicle underneath a flat deck so that you can, I got a light on in here, so that you can store things inside. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So you can see that I've already got the back of it packed out pretty well. So the deck system gives me organization of things that are going to stay permanently in the vehicle. That's what I'm looking at. So I'm compartmentalizing things with that. And so the smaller drawer is going to be nothing but recovery gear. And to me, that's the most important thing. Of all the things that you would buy for a new off-road type vehicle that you're planning on camping out of, overlanding out of, just getting off trail in, things like that, I think recovery gear is probably your number one place to invest your money. Most of us can camp out of our vehicle just like we camp out of a backpack. So we can throw our backpack in the bed and go camping anywhere we want to as long as we can get there with the vehicle. The problem is you also have to get in and get out. And that's where recovery gear comes in. We'll talk about that more as we go along, but I want you to realize when I talk about some of the things I've got going on with this Jeep, that recovery is way up there in my mind as far as the things that I'm adding to this Jeep right off the bat. So this drawer on this side is going to be nothing but recovery gear. Everything from tire deflators to snatch straps to jacks to shovels, soft shackles, all those kind of things. And we'll talk about that later when the kit's more complete. It's semi-complete now. And then right now what I'm doing with this drawer is I'm using this drawer for basically camp gear that's going to be used to set up my camp, and then emergency gear like self-aid and things like that. We'll talk about that more as we go as well. Now, where do I think your money is best spent on something like this? Well, first of all, I did buy the top from SmartTop to put on the bed of this Gladiator. not because the deck system's not waterproof, but because I knew I was going to put other things in here that were going to be fairly expensive, that I was going to want protected. And also, at some point, I may decide to put a rooftop tent on this vehicle, and I needed a top that was substantial so that it could hold that weight. SmartCap from Africa, you can look it up on the internet. It holds 700 or 900 pounds, something like that, standing still on top of the vehicle, and then like 300 pounds moving down the road. So if you've got a 200-pound rooftop tent on there, and you got a couple people laying in there with their sleep gear at night, you're way underneath those limits to put on top of this. Now, the bars that go on top of this top were not in stock when I ordered the top. They're being put on at a later date with some other modifications. So back to that recovery mentality. You look at a stock Gladiator, and I've changed the grill face on this to an angry grill. Looking at this grill, you really don't have a lot. You've got tow hooks here, but you don't have a lot of recovery, and you don't have anything for self-recovery because you don't have a winch. So if you're planning on traveling by yourself off-road, part of your recovery plan has to be a winch so that you can either get 2-to-1 advantage to pull yourself out, 1-to-1 advantage against the tree to pull yourself out, or you can use that winch to pull yourself sideways or pull yourself from another direction, depending on how you need to move your vehicle. And all of those things are important. And then there's other recovery gear that goes along with that we'll talk about as we go. But as far as main self-recovery gear, one of the things I think when you're off-roading by yourself, a winch is a critical piece of that gear. So I have an aftermarket grill, full steel grill with a light bar and a Warn winch on order. I will have them on the 26th of this month, and I have a full steel bumper with class 3 hitch and recovery points that go on the back. So I have recovery points on the rear, recovery points on the front, and a winch, and a class 3 receiver on the back in case I need to be snatched backwards or pulled backwards. Those things I think are important. So those are the things that are happening within the rest of this month. Front grill, winch, or front bumper, winch, rear bumper, class 3 hitch, and the racks that go across that SmartCap so that you can put a rooftop tent or a rack or whatever you want to put on top of that as well. Now, one of the things I really like about this SmartCap is that it opens from both sides so that you have entry from the side to be able to get things out that you need quickly. And I've got, just as an example of what I think I might need to get to quickly, on this side, I have right inside this door is my air compressor. So if I have to air down or if I have a flat, I have a way to patch that hole or air back up as soon as I hit hardball again. So that air compressor stores right there where it's easy to grab out of there. Then I have a propane tank here, a fridge there. We'll talk about that kind of stuff later. And the Jackery 1500 is right beside that. We'll talk about power unit as well here in a minute. And the other side opens up as well, just like this. It has a cage system here that you can put molly pouches and things like that on if you choose to do so. And I probably will put some kind of a sheath here from my M6 Scout so that it's readily available to me if I want to take it to go hunting. I can just store it right there, shut the door, and it's good and secure that way because all of these doors do lock on this thing as well. Okay, back to what I think is important for this vehicle right off the bat. Again, like I said, recovery was almost my #1 priority. If I was going to purchase things, I purchased recovery gear first and foremost. Some of that stuff's on order. It's not going to be here for a while. Then I think you need to look at what you plan to do with that vehicle and how long you plan to do it. You're going to need some type of power source. And I have a Generac generator, but I wanted to get away from gas power and get more into solar and renewable power. I've got the Jackery 1500 for review and 4 solar panels, 100 watts for that Jackery that I have not done the review on yet. Kind of like letting the people get reviews done that are out there now while I go ahead and use this thing at our base camp at the Pathfinder School and things like that to kind of test it out and get some real life feedback on it myself after using it for a while. We'll get more into that Jackery in another video. But I changed over from gas power to solar power. And how much solar power you really need depends on what you plan to do. You can get away with a cooler pretty easy for a weekend. But if you're going to go somewhere for a week where you might be stopping multiple times, or you may not be stopping multiple times, you may stop one time and try to store some type of meat and foods and things like that that you need to keep cold, then you may want to go to some type of refrigerator like I've got back here with this IceCo. We'll talk about that again in another video. But because I'm running the IceCo refrigerator, I need more power. to run that thing. So I've got the Jackery 1500 in there. Once you get beyond, you know, your food storage, and you could do nothing but dry food if you wanted to, you know, some kind of stowaway gourmet, just add water meal, something you buy at Walmart, you know, and North Sides and things like that, instant mashed potatoes, all those kind of things, meats that have already been cooked and are packaged. All that stuff can be done where you can cook on a campfire and you don't need to worry about too much storage of cold food at that point. So those are decisions you need to make and what comfort level you want to be at, who you're camping with, things like that. If you do that, maybe you don't need the fridge. Maybe you just use a cooler or not even a cooler at all as far as that goes. The next thing you probably want to think about is your water. You know, water storage and water filtration, because you may be able to take some water with you, like 5 gallons from a known potable source. But once you get out somewhere, that potable water may go away. And if you need to refill, you're going to need to have a container that's capable of filtering that water. I think the next place that I would say you need to spend your money is on your water. You know, we know that from a survival scenario, water is life. Carrying 5 gallons of water with you or a couple of gallons of water with you is great, but what are you going to do when that's gone? If you're planning on staying out multiple days and you may not be somewhere where you can refill with potable water because you're out on a trail somewhere, something like that, you're at a lake, then you want to be able to fill up something that you can filter the water through. And the Lifesaver jerry can gives you that option. It's great to carry something like the Grail if you're on a trail and you want to. That's on the fly. That's the whole purpose of that Grail, is not having to sit and boil water to disinfect or pump something to disinfect. I can get 26 ounces of water right now. That's the same thing this Lifesaver does for you in a larger bulk amount in a 5 gallon jerry can. Because it has a filter in it, all you do is pressurize the container, push the button, and every bit of water that comes out of that has been through the filter system that is underneath there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well in the future, but I wanted you to realize that I think Lifesaver is probably the next place. Your water storage is the next place you want to think about spending your money. Okay, so I really don't want to get too deep into a lot of this stuff because I want to do separate reviews on some of this gear and things like that as we go along. But I just wanted to kind of let you get in my head to understand what I was thinking about with building this vehicle for the purpose that I plan to use it for. It doesn't matter if you call this a bug out vehicle, if you call this a camping vehicle, call this an overland vehicle, that doesn't matter. You're doing the same thing. You're trying to build sustainability within this vehicle so that you can go on multiple day trips and not have to rely on things outside or stores and things like that to keep you going. So my number one priority with that is going to be recovery if I'm going to be off-road. Once you get beyond recovery, obviously water storage and water carrying, food storage and food carrying, and then you get into something like cooking. And you can cook on a campfire if that's what you choose to do. You can cook on a single burner stove. If you're using just add water meals, you can use a jet boil, for crying out loud. But if you want to get a little fancier than that, you can get a fancier stove. I have a Primus 2-burner propane stove in here right now, but I also have a partner stove on order because I believe in spending money to get things that are going to last a lifetime. Not to say that a Coleman stove won't last forever, because they probably will. I'll talk about that more when I get that stove as well, because it's on order being shipped to me from the manufacturer. Okay, there was a whole lot more blah, blah, blah in this video than I really wanted to get into. I just wanted to introduce you to my Gladiator, talk to you about the build, talk to you about where I've started, where I've come to now, and next steps. And then we'll talk about some of these individual pieces of gear that I kind of touched on in this video, as well as others as we go along in this series. And we're going to do some overnighters and stuff like that. We're going to have a good time. Honestly, my schedule is so busy right now, I can't see straight. We have classes almost every single weekend, and I've got prep days before classes, so I have very little time off to do anything other than catch up and answer emails and take care of my social media obligations, things like that. But my plan is to take some of those weekday days and at least do a few overnighters here and there with this bad boy and do some relaxing and some fishing, and hopefully I can get some filming in while I'm doing it. I appreciate your views, guys. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends, and I'll be back with another video as soon as I can, guys. Thanks.